Hello, Global Summit. Thank you for joining my session on Playing Life as a Game, looking at our individual perspective and our perception of what this thing called reality, or that we like to term and categorize as reality, is. I'm going to be taking you through some practical exercises and looking at some theory of how, especially at this time when society itself seems to be unstable, there's a lot of whispers about what will happen after this coronavirus, potentially some good reflection on what our career is, what we do to create some sense of community, these questions probably being stirred up in these moments of uncertainty. And I feel that my life as someone avidly fascinated in game theory, in the illusion of storytelling, in immersive theatre, all these kind of contexts where we play with reality, it really comes in handy when life seems a little bit uncertain, and that the veneer, the facade, the apparency of what we thought was real starts to shimmer. There's a glitch in the matrix, so to speak. And so I hope to impart some playful, some very earnest, some simple, but also widely relevant ideas about game design, about play, and about inspecting and questioning what reality is itself. So I'd like you to enter the space with me. I always feel that these containers, whether it be an in-person ritual or an event, a conference, an online summit like this, they are tapping back into that assembly, that coming together. And that in itself is a declaration of a reality. It's absolutely a tangible thing when we tune in together and we agree. That is the foundation of reality. You know, when you're playing a game like chess or soccer, it's like, oh, well, I can't run outside this line. I can't touch the ball with my hands. Of course, all these things can be done, but it's through the agreement and the alignment and playing by the rules that suddenly that ball has power. When it goes in the net, a score goes on the scoreboard. And so what I would sincerely request, if you are stepping in with me right now, it's not just a brief scroll through. It's not just a side thing. I really want to give you everything, and I'd request that you step in right now and just do yourself the honor of quietening the sideline noise, of getting maybe a pen and paper to take some notes, of setting up your space so that it can become the blank canvas on which we can game design a life going forward. It's such a gift to have these moments of reflection, to have this time out of the incessant game that we were born into, that we didn't even really understand that we could participate in the writing of the rules of. We kind of inherited a game. We were born into a community when often we didn't feel like we could touch the sides. We go into public spaces, and even though it's a public space, we don't really think we can participate in naming what we do in that space. We rock up, eat our packed lunch, head home into the safe space where we can actually move the furniture around and decide what the culture of our little bubble is. But it's at times like this where the old rule book starts to show its age, that we get to have this time out. Call it on yourself, call it on the incessant noise, turn off the phones, really plug in and come back to that ultimate architect that we all hold within us. Into that person who can foresee and can look at the lie of the land and go, we could put a tennis court here, we could put a monastery here. What can we do with this open plane of the future? Looking at the future as a landscape that we can cultivate. So join me now as we create this little ceremony of undoing, of reflection, and step into this dialogue. My wonderful partner Naila Rose is to my side looking at any comments, so if you have any comments, feel free to put them to me with questions or your own experiences, and I'll try to incorporate those. I thought of doing this as a pre-recorded video, but I felt into some of the videos which are going in live, and just the beauty of the dialogue, of the collective joining, of the energy, of the real-timeness, of like, I am here, you are there, we are in this together. So I really wanted this to be a live dialogue. So take a time to ground, take a time to just detach from the incessant noise, that drone of considerations that might be at the back of the head. Just feel that. Just detach, float up away, and tune into the simplicity of your senses in this moment, not attached to identity or story, but imagine, it's like talking about The Matrix, the movie, where Morpheus takes Neo into that white room. I think it's the architect's room, and it's just this real possibility. Feel that energetic resetting back to 0 point. If you remember a calling of integrity, if you remember a simplicity, an open, earnest connection of belonging, you are in a place now where principle, integrity, truth, power is welcome. To author something, what we're going to be doing in the session is authoring a game. A simple, clear strike. Simply put, unapologetically bold, ludicrous maybe, but heart-centered. That is the language that makes sense when we start to create worlds. If you think of the Big Bang, rippling out, and there is tumultuous changes, there is destruction, there are cries of whatever had been built before being, the face ripped off it, and there is this conservative conservation. And I think it's really important to look at the emotional level with the action of conservation. It's a beautiful intention to preserve what was, to protect our forest, to protect your life, your job, your business, to protect natural species. I understand that love. We were born into this world and it's what we know. I just had a call coming in. Apologies for that. But at the same time, if we have this wild willingness to shift away from what we know, our conservatism and our conservation start to make way to a wild rodeo yeehaw of ability to experience more. Our capacity expands. And in doing so, we welcome more of life. We welcome in the dark and the light, the painful and the pleasurable. We welcome in the simple and the complex, all of these things. And I think that's when we can really receive life. Life is not the compartmentalized, simple, categorized Western world economy. It's not the identity that your family has learned of you. It's not the language you speak or the clothes you wear. These things are all uber simplifications of the vast possibility of reality. So when our conservatism makes way to play, you could call it chaos. I see chaos just to be the unknown at play. I think there is a pattern in chaos, just we can't always perceive it from our little peephole of perspective, like maybe the ends link up somewhere beyond the screen. And I think at these times when society is in tumultuous shifts, knowing how to surf the chaos is a really great survival tool. So in entering into this container of chaos, I'm asking you to just shake yourself up. I'm asking you to activate yourself, to crunch away that brittle shell you might exist within. Move your face, bring yourself back to the malleable clay. Allow yourself to be the things and feel the things that exist outside of the usual or outside of your identities. Allow yourself to be ugly, allow yourself to be fierce, allow yourself to be uncertain. And in doing so, welcoming in more of the signals. So when I look at perception and I look at reality, let's take perception first. Perception is based on your perspective, where you are standing, because that's of course what you hear, what you see, what you smell, what you taste. And the way that I see it is that we then reassemble our reality in our imagining, and it all translates. I see a wall, I touch a wall, cool, that makes sense, I'm not crazy, I'm not hallucinating. But it is very much subjective. When we start to cement that perspective, our identity, and attach it to what is in our surroundings, we require our surroundings to continue in order for us to continue. What I mean by that is, if you attach your personal identity to a current state of society, if society starts to shake and crumble and collapse, you will feel like you are dying, because you have woven your identity with the story that is around you, with the culture that is around you. And there's some functionality in that, because we as leaders or educators want an investment in the game. Like, imagine a video game where you are so involved in it, you literally think if your character dies, you die. Like, you're going to do anything to keep that game going. It's a really good way to get players on the field and people really invested in the game, but it is just not true. So I've drawn up a few little diagrams here. I've drawn them backwards, so I hope they translate to your screen. Does that read forward? Yes, it does. Awesome. So this is the mythology that I want to talk about today. We as storytellers, and by storytellers I mean parents, I mean politicians, I mean educators, I mean even just people in public spaces being characters and telling certain stories, sitting upright on a bus. We're continuing a mythology. We're participating in a real-time version of a story which is handed to us and which we perpetuate. So this thing here is currently shaking. And my proposition today is that it's completely arbitrary and unnecessary. It helps coordinate communities. It helps me feel like I have a belonging and like I'm not going mad, because imagine if all different cultures and communities in different countries had completely different ways of living. I would feel really awash in this big ocean. So we create this here, society, but I think it is completely unnecessary and in many ways unfunctional. I don't know how to experience a life on a global scale. I'm always just on a community level. Conceptually, mentally, I know I'm part of the human race, which is X number of billion people doing X number of trillion things every day and economies zipping around and blah, but it's not practical. To play on a global scale is purely poetic. It's purely a philosophic endeavor. Perhaps it's useful for whole governments to try and coordinate around, but it's not a functional way to play life as a human being. So what I encourage you to come down to is this idea of community and self. Self is obvious, it's you, it's your direct perception, it's how you feel, it's how you taste and touch and what you make that mean within you. That's your direct perception of reality, and that needs to be questioned too. But one level beyond that is your community. It's your family, it's the people you hang out with, and that is directly within your control. That does affect you on a day-to-day life. That is the space you can create new rules around, like, you know, are you polyamorous or not? Do you all live in a house or not? If I give you a fish, will you give me a boot? Like, it's up to you to work out the economy of that, to work out kind of how that works. And that is the space that's functional, that's real, and that you can have direct effect over and be affected by. And that is a place that I would really encourage you to look at as you start to look at what is apparently collapsing. Is your community collapsing or not? I know for me it's not. And this is where inspecting our mythology is vital to our sanity. If you tune into mass media and the fear-mongering and that societal kind of perspective, all sorts of weird things are happening, and there can be many different stories about that. And we have to trust this mediascape, because we as humans can't live on that level, which is why I think the idea of being part of society can be really destructive to an individual. When I look at my family and my friends, when I look at my direct input and output as an individual, it's actually quite chill right now. It's simpler. I'm inside in isolation. I can focus. And there is a beauty and a renewal in that. It's not disastrous. It is actually quite natural. You can still go out and walk in your local area, maybe take more notice of your local area. And I think that is the beauty of this recalibration. And I earnestly encourage you to play a few of the games I'm going to impart to you now, to really connect in and feel some authorship of the game you play on that level, on your self level and on your community level. So let's jump into that. Your reality level, as far as perception goes, is this internal cake. Let's call it a cake, right? So I'm sitting here talking about the self level now. I'm listening to my room. I'm smelling it, I'm tasting it, I'm looking at it. Now, I believe that reality can only come to my surface. It's like a relay race. The light, the sound, all these textures come to my perception as perceptics or signals that I'm perceiving. And then I build this cake inside me. So if there's a fire outside, I start to feel really excited or nervous. If there's my partner coming and being seductive, I feel really aroused. If there's a puppy, I feel whatever, it's cute and I want to play. But the puppy's not inside me. My partner's not inside me. Or maybe. I don't know. It depends how you play. You know, the sunrise and sunset's not inside me. But I am mixing that cake of self through my chemicals, my hormones, the electric impulses through my nervous system, my translation of significance of what the words mean, etc. So my proposal to you is that everything that you experience is already within you. You hold the component parts like the ingredients of a cake. The perceptions that come in are simply just the spoon to stir them and mix certain things. Some of us might think that we're and might truly be empathic and we actually literally pick up energy waves from outside. But I really think even if you are, there's a great deal of personal interpretation going on. And if you're in a place during this quarantine lockdown where it feels like things are chaotic, you really do have a lot of autonomy over how you mix your inner cake. Now, I talk about things in my open world training, and if you are interested in the training I do, it comes under the banner of Open World Realities. You can check out my website, it's in the title here. But with open world realities and open world theatre, I talk about things called threshold release techniques. Meaning when you get to your threshold, when you get to the edge of your capacity, how do you release and soften? A real simple handful of things you can do, having cold showers as an example, fasting for a day and softening through that hunger space, even being aroused and trying to soften over that, having anger, once again softening through that, even pain, pinching yourself or undergoing anything which is, you know, to some degree at your threshold, and learning how you don't have to react, don't have to necessarily respond, but can author a decision. So first one I mentioned was the cold shower. Often we'll brace against it and we'll contract, and our breath will come up into our chest and into our neck. Fight or flight. With a little bit of training, what you can do is have the water come onto the back of your head and actually activate your nervous system, feeling that energy and the sensation going out throughout your inner tree, bringing the breath down into your belly, softening and opening up and allowing yourself to be played. And that's a good question. How are you being played by life? You are an instrument. What song are you singing? And being really bearing witness to the inputs. They could be people's opinions, words. Do you curate the sounds, the colors of the room, the lighting in your bedroom, you know, the things you listen to? Do you curate what comes in? Are you then aware of the inner cake that's being made? And can you do simple practices like the cold shower or like fasting for a day where you come to a point where you want to react, the body wants to survive, even holding your breath for, you know, a minute or so, and feeling that automaticity that kicks in and just telling yourself, detach, soften, bring some intentionality into how that gets remixed inside yourself. And all of a sudden, no matter what life throws at you, there's this authorship capacity that expands. And you feel so much more in control, even in the chaos. There's a real beauty to that. So these are just the direct sensory perceptions. But of course, we are mental beings as well, and the mind comes in. And that's where identity is so important. So I've drawn another little character here. I think that's right for you guys. So imagine you are doing a role-playing game. You open up the menu, you get to create your own character, your avatar to play this life as. What is your name? So my name on the screen is Atlas Talisman. That's about the third name that I've taken. My legal name is not Atlas, but also my legal name is not my birth name. I play in this space, and I really take it as a rites of passage, an initiation into a new identity, and it really makes a huge difference. If you were to conceive of yourself as following through on the lineage, say, you know, being a class of character or avatar in a game, that is a monk, say, or a warrior. All of a sudden, those perceptions and those signals which come in have a different meaning because your values change. So as a monk, you might feel really great. It's a bit of an ego hit when you sit and you read a sacred text or whatever for like 4 hours, and then you go and barefoot down to the river. You haven't eaten, you're fasting. All of these things which can be arduous, like barefoot, not eating, reading for extended periods of time. But because it complements your identity as a monk, you feel like you're leveling up. And these are called intrinsic rewards. So thinking of life as a game, you've got these two pillars, extrinsic and intrinsic. The external or extrinsic rewards is like people saying you're good or you getting money for things. And that is often the way that our society runs right now. You know, social standard and money in your bank account. But it's really not going to make you feel good about playing life if that's all you're getting. It's the intrinsic rewards. It's the internal feeling of growth, of progress, of figuring something out in yourself, of getting better, of leveling up your character that will make you want to come back and play your life. Imagine waking up every morning and looking forward to what you're going to do. And that comes down to a large degree of making sure you've got intrinsic rewards. And I'll talk about your scoring system. Like if you're designing your game, what's your score? How do you get points in your life? And I'd encourage you to move it towards an intrinsic system of personal economy. And that way, regardless of what's happening outside in the societal economy, your personal economy is within your grasp. And that really brings a lot of calm in the uncertainties. So one of these things is your name. And I like the fact that we say, what are you called? Because it is being called into a certain identity. So if you're going to play this game, I totally encourage you to rename yourself and also rename who that is. So as you're, for example, at the moment in this isolation situation, or if you want more discipline, maybe take on this identity as like a monk or take on an identity as a warrior. I know that when I go into the forest and I'm in a cold river, I feel good. I don't feel suppressed and victimized and, oh no, why do I have to do this? Is this external hand holding me in the forest? I'm like, no, I am, I am Bear. I am here in the cold stream. This is what I was born for. And I feel that the identity of the warrior makes those things pleasurable. I don't think that signals are inherently unpleasant or pleasant. I think to a large degree it's your interpretation based on your identity. And if you've built your identity so far in this life around someone who, oh, I don't do that. No, I don't like loud music, or I only do this or that. I really encourage you to re-inspect the character you have created. Not to say that that character is wrong, and there might be, intrinsic things to you. You might have really sensitive hearing, I don't know. But mind over matter, psychosomatic ills, these things are very palpable. Placebo effect, all these things. We are in illusion. And if you can take a moment to soften your grip on the illusion that you think is real, your identity, your likes and dislikes, you are going to have such a capacity expand in you where the things which were once so unpleasant, having to wake up before sunrise, having to go out in the cold, not having food, whatever it is, they can actually, believe it or not, become blissful and pleasurable because they align to a certain scoring system, to a new identity. The warrior loves physical activity. The warrior loves being in the elements. The warrior loves going through hardship. It's like an achievement, a level up, and not being victimized. So that's why I believe that playing with identity is really important in these times. The next thing in creating this new character, this who you are, is what's your treasure? What are you going for? Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey talks about, the cave you fear hides the treasure you seek. It's really looking at what represents unconditional love and what represents ultimate power. The mother and the father. What is your ultimate treasure? What are you going to collect? And in Joseph Campbell's theory of the hero's journey, you need to go through the death in order to receive the ultimate boon or the ultimate treasure. So what do you have to let go of? Who can you become to really receive the treasure that you are seeking? And your treasure is basically your values, what you think is important, aligns to your purpose, and also is part of your intrinsic system. If my treasure is healing people, I will feel like I'm growing and doing well when people around me are getting better. If I think I'm a teacher And my treasure is a bunch of students who are doing well. If people around me are learning and applying things and I don't have to do it for them, I feel better. If I'm a builder and I want to craft this physical world like a demiurge, you know the demiurge, the gods who craft the physical, and I see beautiful buildings, I'm like, that's my treasure. You know, it's your havingness. Doesn't mean I have to possess it or hold it, but I'm able to experience it. Here's a really interesting idea. Anything that you can create, you can experience, and you can have. If you don't think you can make art, you probably can't really receive it as well. If you don't think you can make someone feel loved or don't have like sexual pleasure, you might not be able to receive it as well. If you don't think you can make money or create value, you probably can't receive it as well. And so this is where the authorship really takes hold, is when you feel you can do things in life. And when you feel you have the right to participate in life, you can suddenly then receive so much more. And this is why I'm really passionate about people being autonomous authors of their own game. Because it's really offensive to me if people are born into a society and it's like, you can't play because you don't have money, you can't build that thing because you don't own the land, or you can't be part of this culture because of this thing or this, there's racism, there's sexism, there's all these isms which categorize arbitrary lines even down to the national borders on the map. Human beings and our egocentricity casts all these can'ts, all these limitations. But my approach in open world is if it's not physical, if it's not based on physics, it's just not true. It's just part of the illusion of society. So when you look at the hierarchy of reality, you've got this level here. I haven't written down, but it's basically, they say that all biology is chemistry and all chemistry is physics. So our biology is, our organs and our wellness, but that comes down to chemical interactions on a cellular level or organic level. And those reactions obey physics of this physical universe. So that is the space that I like to play in. Doing movement, reverberating your voice, playing, how can I make sounds? Skimming a stone on a pebble thing, going into a public space, seeing how many people you can get around you to dance, playing music, like that's physics, that's actuality. Regardless of opinion, and opinion can change so quickly. Someone will love it, someone will hate it, bullshit, who cares, arbitrary, doesn't matter, part of society, it's antiquated, it's crumbling. What's left after the wall falls down? That's physics. If you play with physics, unless you're into some deeper magic that defies physics, I don't know, I'm not quite there yet, but usually physics is pretty damn dependable. And this brings me to one of my secret hacks of life. I really, really, really believe in this. What is your key input and output? Here's you, little creature, something going in, something coming out. That question alone is one of the key stabilizing factors in the game of my life. The way that I define it is that I can receive nature. Because if you need to receive praise, if you need to receive money, if you need to receive many audiences coming to your show, you're effect of someone else's cause. I don't know if people are going to pay me. I don't know if people are going to come to my show. I don't know. And all of a sudden I feel starving. Is my life going to be okay? Is my life force going to be sustained? That's a really precarious place to be, particularly if a society suddenly takes it away from you. You are a victim of your societal dependence. So what I encourage is for you to work out your autonomous and self-authored input and output. So to give you an example, my input is nature. If I can go out and I can feel the water, if I can go out and I can see the sky, if I can go out and experience the beautiful vista of a forest, any of these things, I feel nourished. I feel I have my input satiated. And so far in my life, no one has been able to take that away from me. I mean, you might be able to lock me in a prison. That would severely limit that. But even if I could just tap down into the earth and just feel the air, my interconnected, capacity to link with the sky, these things are stable. My output, what I can contribute and give, is art. I can make songs. I can make stories out of nothing. It's just like making money. I can continue to give. And those are my two pillars. If I can breathe in and take in nature, if I can give out art, I feel, the rest of the things can shift and change. My relationships, my possessions, my geographic location, my social standing, that's fluid. And that is the truth of it. These things do rise and fall and they change, and it's healthy not to conserve but to allow and expand and find the pleasure in all these things. Now, that also might come down to identity. I realized that before I talked about, your identity aligns with the intrinsic value of things. So I'm open to that being different as well. But if you can be born again, it's like, it's being a chameleon. How can I custom fit my likes and dislikes, my treasures, my purposes to what is alive right now? Because when we take away the specifics of the form, I think that the function itself of connection, of bringing life, whatever your purpose is, can be present in many different societies and many different stories. So if you were born and we were all an agricultural society and all we did was make food, if you were a teacher or if you were an artist, there would be a way to fulfill that function in that particular form. You might, line up the orchards in a beautiful way or lay out the pumpkin pie well or whatever it is. You could still do that. And then if that society collapsed and we became all technophiles and all we did was online, your artistry or your education capacity or whatever it is, even if you were a builder, you could somehow build something in the online world. So really be able to be fluid. Know the essence of your purpose, the essence of your gift and your genius, and being willing to take on new identities dependent upon the new story that is cast by our collective society. And then you just feel free. It's like, okay, I can put on this costume now, knowing you're still in your integrity, knowing you're still following that baseline purpose that is your lifeblood, and keeping your input and output, keeping your way of receiving and giving autonomous so it's not reliant on the external society. That's a really key part of sanity for me. I think it's also really important at these times of cultural and societal evolution to have respect for, but also the ability to transcend the specifics of any one society or culture. It's very popular at the moment in our society to deride Western progressive built, colonized society and culture, and praise traditional indigenous culture. And I see the balance that brings. However, if we blindly follow any culture, we are saying that a human construct supersedes the natural construct. Now, certain cultures might better align to nature, which is probably our argument for indigenous cultures. They probably serve and integrate and harmonize better with nature, in which case, awesome, they're probably a better one to go with. But even then, let's really keep our eyes open and not have our guilt react us to praise any human-made culture, because ultimately it is a story. It is an ambiguation or abstraction of natural truth. The actuality is what is. If not a single human being was ever born or ever wrote a single book, that is what is. And within that isness is all the things that we praise. Is the God, is the nature, is the everything. It exists beyond our making. Sure, there's beautiful things in our bubble, books and internet, and we've got a bunch of cool things. Like those don't necessarily exist without human beings. But I do believe these are all translations of the ultimate external beauty that we are trying to translate and categorize to better feed it to our next of kin, to our generations that come forward. But let's realize that culture is a story. And it's when we tap into state that we have universal stability. When we tap into and attach to story, we can have instability when that story starts to shift and change chapter. So yeah, let's not attach to any one culture too strongly when ultimately at the foundation is nature, universe, God, aesthetics, whatever it is that those are trying to translate for us. Or with me, tracking, feel free to ask any questions if you have them. I'm happy to answer any questions about reality, about game design, how to apply game design practically to your daily life. I've talked a little bit before, if any of you are joining later, on working on a personal and community level as opposed to a societal level, unplugging from the societal story, coming back to the state of actuality, and questioning how your identity is filtering your direct perceptions to bring an internal state. And that is a beautiful point of stability if you start to have autonomy in that space. Let's do a little exercise now, actually. So bringing yourself into alignment with your spine, undulating your pelvis a little bit to unlock your lower back. Tensing your PC muscles like you're going to wee, and you're stopping and starting, activating the root, activating your base. Breathing down into your belly, rolling your shoulders, finding any stuckness, allowing your shoulders to come down and opening your heart, stretching your face, rubbing your hands together, stretching this mask, sprinkling down the nervous system, grounding your feet into the earth, straightening up, opening the top of your head, softening your face, expanding out the back, and feeling after that combobulation the beautiful stillness in the elixir of your internal solution. Feeling that any tension is starting to allow a softness so that all of the fluids, the blood, the hormones, the energetic synaptic clicks can better bring you into 0 point. Feeling your own personal space expanding beyond this meat form. Feeling a responsibility and a kindness to all the symbiotic systems that weave in and out of us. Our oxygen, our bacteria on our skin, energetic balance of things around us. And I'm going to invite you into some state shifting. So from this 0 point, I invite you into an internal experience. Don't worry about performing it or showing the people in the room around you or performing for me. If it evolves into sound or movement or expression, that's fine. But feel the internal state shift of the experience of anticipation. Where does it activate in your body? Not about a story. Don't have to bring into the thing, oh, I'm anticipating this happening, or I remember that time I was anticipating. Don't worry about the story. Just what's the state? Shifting from anticipation into excitement. Bring that up a bit. From there, bring it out into arousal. Bring that down into, or twist it into confusion. And feel that plummet into just like embarrassment. And then have some kind of blame. But then have that blame, that forward come into curiosity and start to open again and welcome in. And feeling that each time where that shifts into your body, where you breathe, what the sensation is. Some of these might be easier to connect with, some might be harder, some might be numb, some might be really pungent. From your curiosity, find humor. And then find love. Find love and respect and recognition. And then coming up into acknowledgement and pride, a really beautiful, humble pride. There's a remembering. And then there's wisdom and peace. And then drop that. Shake it out, back to 0 point. Cool. So there's some inner cake making. Yeah, that's a state. And those things we're just making up on the spot, but we do have that conductor's wand within us. You know, if you feel you're stuck in any kind of expression or feeling for an extended time, you can actually shift your state. And it's amazing how the mind can interpret whatever's going on as positive or negative. Once again, back to your identity. Does it fall into your treasure or not? Are these things that you find redeeming or not? It's really beautiful when we can start to feel that self-conduction of our inner state. So moving beyond that, how does this relate to real-life action? And despite all the meditation, all the personal work, all the identity deconstruction, sometimes we still have inhibitions. We still have considerations that we just can't get around. And there might be some beautiful possibility you've known for maybe most of your life, a version of yourself, or a business idea, or a type of relationship, or whatever it is, an environment that you want to live in. But your identity or your way of being just prevents, regardless of what you do, it's like, whoa, this barrier is like watertight. I cannot get through that. I'm magnetized back into the safe side of the fence. And this is where this little game comes in really handy. Crowdsourced decision making. Not making the decision yourself, but outsourcing to other people's ideas, other people's points of decision. So I've made up this game called Vicarious. At the moment in lockdown, it's not too easy to play because it involves online audience playing a real human avatar, directing them to go out into society and do things in life. Can probably work out an isolation version of this game as well. But essentially with Vicarious, what happens is I hold my phone at my chest with the camera pointing out as my eye level. And then an online group of people decide where I should go, who I should talk to, understanding me as a character. You know, I am Atlas, I'm an artist, I do embodiment stuff, I'm a game designer, blah, blah, blah. They know my kind of capacities, but they send me out to try and play the game of life. And this simple concept of crowdsourcing the decision-making is a great way to implement things that we've seen work in the economic sphere, say, for example, Kickstarter, where, you know, you crowdsource your capacity to raise funds. And all of a sudden, all of these people's resources become accessible to you. They do this in the science field as well. There might be a particular problem to do with DNA strand decoding or whatever it is, and one laboratory just can't get their head around it. They can't solve it. So they crowdsource it. They start to leverage the hive mind. And all of those people have different perspectives, different perceptions, different interpretations, different stories. And that gets around any one limitation of inhibitions and personal barriers. So imagine if you outsourced your decision-making for a day. Imagine the different people you would meet. Imagine the different places you would go, the different things you would do. And this game, if you're interested, you know, connect with me through openworldrealities.com. But I'm looking for other players, other Vicarians to be played in Vicarious, or online players to control us, to really see what a crowdsourced life would look like. Can you get around my personal inhibitions? And more importantly, directly for you, can your loved ones, people you really trust, help guide you? And can you have the discipline to not listen to your own inhibitions, to not give in to whatever internal compass? I'm not saying totally ignore your intuition, but it's about balance. If you have gotten to where you are after 20 or 30 or 40 years of listening to that decision-making process, what would happen if another mind decided what you did? And that just excites me so much. I am riveted with the effects of this if allowed to play out long term. And that is one of my principal goals, to articulate it here, to be held as a collective vision, is to grow Vicarious as a game where people play life and there is a collective decision making and individuals are raised up through the collective genius of us all to circumnavigate their individual limitations and actually start to activate along their personal purpose line to have wins and expansion and more connections. It's not necessarily about winning as in I've got more property than you've got more money, not those old metrics, but it always comes down to experience and change, which I'm going to talk about now. What is your score? If your game is life, what's your score? Now, society would have us believe that your score relies on usually two things: popular opinion, like your reputation, social standing, and money. Like if everyone loves you and you're rich, you can do whatever you want and you feel pretty good in the modern society. But as good as that is, I believe that there's an evolving economy. And I really can't remember where I read it. I read a bunch of stuff. But this line of evolution apparently is what's happening in our economy, and it does make sense to me too. So here's a potential evolution of your life score, how to be successful in life. So commodity-based economy. This would have been around the Industrial Revolution. Our economy was based on how many things we could produce in factories and pump out, and people bought them, and everyone was encouraged to be a good citizen and get a whatever, bread maker or television or car or whatever it was. But after a while, there's a finite number of things we can pump, and then eventually we don't have a closed loop production system, so our garbage waste piles end up building up. We don't know what to do with them. It's like, we can't, okay, let's have a different type of economy. We've got too many people to fit in the factories. All these people we educated to go and wield spanners and crank wheels. We need something else. So then we started to get into the service-based economy. This is where we would give people massages, or we would guide people on what international travel they should do. We could talk on the phone. We as service and servants, we guide different things throughout the economy, and a lot of people have jobs in that kind of vein. But then it's still got limitation, because in and of itself, it doesn't innately do anything. It's a service, and depending on the design of the service, it'll either be good or not. Then we come down to an experience-based economy. That's when people start to go to retreats and have these mind-blowing experiences and doing ayahuasca and climbing to the top of mountains, and it's like, oh my God, I had this amazing experience design, experiential this, experiential that. And we're willing to pay for it because we actually feel changed by it. It's direct, it's magical, it enhances this life story we're having. And then this final step is change. So it's like, cool, okay, you went to the top of a mountain, did ayahuasca, and skydived back down to the base jump to the bottom. Like, that's cool, but Tony, you're back in the office this week. What changed because of that experience? And that is where it's really exciting. It's like, no, if your currency is changes, that's authorship. That's being the architect. That's being the game designer. That's being godlike. You're creating your reality, because what you do brings changes. That could be a change in the culture of your family. It could be a change in your body. You get stronger. It could be literally a biochemical change because you're doing this biohacking, you're doing breath work every day, meditating in flotation tanks, whatever it is. It could be a change in your environment. You do landscape gardening. You make labyrinths, whatever it is. And I believe that is a really great place to function in. So when you recalibrate your life design, I would encourage you to score yourself. And you can do this in isolation, particularly those of us who have had our earning capacity cut. You might not have much autonomy or causative effect over being able to generate more money, which can be really frustrating, makes us feel impotent. So in creating a game, you can designate what the new scoring system is. So I would encourage you to move from commodity-based, if you're basically making money and self-worth based on trading objects and selling. Cool, move beyond that into service. How can I serve people? How can I make other people's things work better? How can I be a point of reference in between? If you're that, maybe move beyond that. How can I give people experiences? Or maybe even more importantly, how can I have an experience for myself? You're in the same space if you're in quarantine, but have you smelt the carpet recently? Have you slid on your belly through the kitchen? Have you, had a shower in the dark? What simple experiences, how can you remix the way that your perceptions come in? Have a silent day, have a blind day, have a day where you don't get out of bed and just lie down. Can you do that? How can you re-experience your environment? And then once you've had a good go at that, move on to change. In this time, whether it be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 months, I don't know how long the isolation is going to last, but how many things can you change about yourself? Let's go in shells of change. Your inner state. Can you state shift? Whenever something comes in, do you weigh up, is this activity worth sacrificing my inner state for? Really become a master of the inner domain. Then the outer shell. Can you change your physical body? Your relationships, can you change how you deal with your partner, your kids, or whoever it is? Your physical environment, can you optimize and change the lighting? Can you give yourself really nice, like a reading nook, or can you improve that space? Your community, how many of us go out and take the authorship of actually creating a better space in our gardens, in our parks, or in these kind of areas directly around us? That's exciting change. And regardless of what happens post-COVID-19, I really believe you'll have such a stronger foundation, and you'll have a scoring system. You'll be rich, you'll be productive. If you work out what comes in, work out how it changes you, make sure you've got an autonomous thing you can always be fed by. For example, for me, it's nature. Work out what you put out, so you're always able to give. You can always play in life. You don't have to wait for someone else to employ you or give you permission to do something. You can be doing something. For me, that's art. I can always give, and I always feel like I'm playing in life. And then move your scoring system, your self-worth, from money and external praise, which like I said are extrinsic rewards, to intrinsic rewards, things that make you feel like you're changing, you're getting better, you're learning, you're leveling up this avatar of self. Now, if you can't work out what that is, maybe your identity is stuck. So try some identity shifting, rename yourself, work out, your treasure. And there was another one here that I put on my chart, which is called Lineage. And I think this is a really nice one here too. You can see that down the bottom, Lineage. For me, lineage is beyond any one time, any one industry, any one culture, any one bloodline. It's a way that we serve the world. So it could be like being a tea master or a kung fu master or a healer / nurse. Whatever's the lineage, this function, this role we can play. I believe they are beyond cultures, but also connect us to other cultures. Like if you're a shamanic and a healer or a warrior, you can find kindred in many cultures and many times and echelons and eons because you are of the similar lineage. So work with those three things: your name or identity, your treasure, what you value, and what lineage you serve. And you can really start to have a whole different response to what's coming in to you. Do you know what the time is, my love?
It's 54 minutes to 11.
Oh, amazing. Cool. So we've got about 6 minutes left. Thank you for those who have just joined. I really hope that this has been a functional and yet quite philosophical look at how to turn life into a game, practically, and also to really re-inspect what reality is at this time when society is being shaken. And I'm really encouraging us not to work on a societal level, not to buy into the mythology of the time, not to attach our identity and embed it into society, which can fluctuate and maybe collapse or evolve, but instead come down to a community and a personal level and start to understand that we have authorship within that space to conduct how we interpret reality and therefore how we create reality, and really playing with these things like our scoring system, like the lineage we play as. And then finally, I'm going to look at this idea of labyrinths. So what's in your mind? What's the difference between a maze and a labyrinth? Let's take a moment to reflect on that. So a maze is a physical puzzle, usually in a space. I'm talking about like hedge mazes and these kind of things, which has actual barriers. You go into a maze and you can't go through that wall. You've got to go left. You've got to try and find your way in or out. A labyrinth, on the other hand, doesn't have walls. It's just a conceptual walking, often circular, going into a center. It's meditative, it's got significance. But if you want, you can just walk right over the delineations and walk right through it. I believe that's how society is. I believe that there are a few walls guarded by guns and barbed wire. I understand that there is a bit of a maze. But by and large, we live within a labyrinth. The world is much more open than we believe. And sometimes even those walls are arbitrary. I like going door knocking, not to convert anyone to anything, but just to see this false categorization of my world, your world. Can that open? I've made friends doing that, just knocking on a door and saying, hi, I don't know, this is who I am, who are you? Like rebringing community back to our streets in that way. What about going and doing something in a public park, just offering something in a space, not feeling like public spaces, we can't be there, but dissolving the artificial walls and saying, you know what, this public space is a really unique place to try and fathom this idea of the human race. We understand humanity one-on-one in our domestic setting, and we poetically understand being part of billions, but it's in the public space we can be, after isolation, the lockdown is dissolved, we can be in the space with hundreds of thousands of people and really get this idea of, whoa, this is kind of the most people I can personally take in through my direct perception, and this is the closest I can get to actually experiencing humanity. And I believe the best way to understand things, to learn, is to do. So what I'd encourage you to do at this time, talking about community, talking about crafting your space, talking about bringing change, create a labyrinth in your local area. It could be lightly done with chalk. It could be done with a little post-it notes or bits of paper encouraging people to do. It could be completely invisible. You might just guide yourself on a walk and put it on social media, like geocaching. You can actually put objects in different places for other people to pick up or do whatever it is. Once again, all this has to be done responsibly. I don't want you transmitting coughing on things and putting them around for other people to come and get. Use common sense, but the point being, can you conduct people through a space to experience it differently? Can you start to take responsibility on a local level for how to create playgrounds, how to create meditative walks, how to make it friendly and interactive? There's a thing called HCI, Human-Computer Interaction, and that's kind of an area that I work in, interaction design and game design, but it doesn't have to be my industry. It's just a human basic thing of having an intermediate thing that people can connect through. If we can make these things, I think it's one of the best services to mankind at the moment. Create things that help things connect. So a labyrinth is such a thing. It's a beautiful offering on a community level. It's a great way to change your relationship to the physical world, to become an architect, and to start to work out what your inner state is in that space. You can allocate a particular part of a park to be a circular walk going in a cone shape or whatever shape, coil shape, and you can just Google, labyrinth patterns and stuff like that. And at different stages of the walk, invite people into a reflection. Ask them to set an intention. Get them to tune into a particular sense, smell, taste, touch. Get them to create something. Encourage them to connect with someone they haven't in a while. Write a letter to that person you haven't expressed. Do whatever it is. And you really facilitate an internal change and experience that also brings change. And I think that it works on the meta level as well, where we realize that that is what society is. It's just a bunch of invisible walls and a bunch of tasks assigned to different areas of the labyrinth. And when we start to claim our right as an architect, society becomes really fun. Because we realize that society is a made-up word that no one really controls. Our inner emotion and our money is kind of goaded by the general media, getting us to want to buy things or think we're really good if we're part of this group, or we all recoil at that because now it's infected. Like, we can be controlled to that degree. But I don't think anyone has a handle on all communities. They need us to buy into the myth of society. And so if you want to really find the way to practically engage with life as a game, work on self, work on community. Reassess your economy, bringing it from commodity-based through to service, experience, and change, and really relish this time to play the game of creating a foundation that you can causively take things out and give things to. And you will feel like you are contributing, you are part of something, you are creating your own game. And it literally is a game. It's made up, just like society is. It's meant to be fun, so be guided by intuition and your curiosity, because when you follow your curiosity, you end up in your genius, that thing you were born to do. And it'll be amazing how the thing you do complements someone else's thing, and we don't all have to violate ourselves because we're all different, got different human designs, different astrological calibrations, all these sort of things. And there is a design where we all fit together. But we are so damn controlling, we think we need to violate our genius and do what's meant to be done, and it's all clashing and we're all unhappy and we're being drained and economy's falling apart and there's inequality and people are homeless and people are sick and depressed and relationships are suffering. Like, Jesus, that game is not a good game. But there is a really good game underlying it, and that is called reality. It's not society. And unfortunately, none of us really know what that game is, because each of us take a bite of it and interpret it ourselves. But there's also something beautiful about that, because your reality is your reality and you're creating it. Well done. And we're all drawing from the greater senses through physics and our physical environment and our spiritual energetic space. But as we start to reclaim this inner space, that inner cake mix, it starts to become hilarious at what we stick ourselves in or free ourselves into. So please, to wrap up, in this time, I highly encourage you to, just going to make sure I've got all my notes here, cool. I highly encourage you to play, to soften, to take this time for deep listening, to not plug into the ongoing fear story which is being played out about how things are collapsing and falling apart. Believe me when I say, continual catastrophes have been happening for decades, for centuries, that our attention and guilt was not focused onto because it suited our general myth to ignore them. Many, many, many more lives have been lost continually. Many, many greater environmental disasters have been perpetrated through our species and just through natural disasters for decades and centuries. Many, many, many worse conditions have been happening all the time. All this happy life, all of the perfect, stable story, it's been chaos as hell beyond that scope of our story if you live in the privileged Western world. And now the story is being told that the world is collapsing because in some ways certain aspects of it are changing and crumbling, and it seems like a collapse if you attach your identities to society. But this is no worse than it's ever been. And if you tap into self and community, you might find it's actually a hell of a lot better now that we've slowed and we've stopped and we've started to question what this game is that we are playing. Thank you for joining me for this talk on reality and on playing life as a game. I hope you have honoured yourself by taking this time to really reflect on the game you're playing. I'm very open to continuing dialogue. I'll try to check the comments, but also I don't go into Facebook too much. I'd much prefer direct correspondence. So if you want to message me via Facebook or just message me, atlas@openworldrealities.com, or just go to my website, which is in the description, and go through the contact form there. I'm here. I'm human. I'm on the same chessboard as you right now. We have aligned momentarily in this fleeting breath of existence, and that's pretty damn cool. So I may as well exchange with you because you're an extension of my symbiotic system. We are breathing the same sky. So yeah, big deep breaths of calm presence. And we've got all the resources we need collectively. So let's share. Thank you for receiving what I've shared tonight. I'm Atlas Talisman. May your life be the signature of your soul. And thank you for playing.